absolutely beautiful city to come to share with you some of our insights around the Department of Human Services. And I guess to start off, I was very grateful. Christoph invited me to the Student Day yesterday, and there's a number of great talks, and I really enjoyed the experience. And one of them was around prejudice and innovation. And I thought, well, it's probably a good way to start in thinking that I'm an Australian, I work for the government. What are some of the prejudices that you guys are already conjuring up in the head? From an Australian point of view, well, beer drinking, meat eating, barbecue, hot sun, summer. Well, I live in Canberra. We're over 2 hours from a beach. In winter, we get down to -10 degrees, which is, quite startling for most people that have never been to Australia. I do have kangaroos that are 5-minute walk around boundaries in my backyard, but I'm a vegetarian, and so I completely go against all of what people typically think of an Australian. So, and I guess from a government point of view, people sort of start to think, oh my God, what is design doing in government? How boring. But look, it's been a really exciting journey, and I guess what I'm here to talk, you guys all know about that. Organisations around the world are starting to look at customer experience and how can we make it better for people. That's nothing new. But I guess what has been changing from a government point of view is this whole area around citizen-centric. And I guess it's around how do we now put the user, the citizen, for us in Australia, the Australian person in the centre of how we design services. And you can imagine, you guys, from a cultural point of view, there is a huge amount of change when it comes to any organisation, but for the government it's quite massive. So I want to take you on a bit of a journey, and one of the key things, I guess, is setting the scene, and this slide encompasses a huge amount that I could actually talk about all day. So I will gloss over a lot of things today, and I encourage you that if after the talk you've got questions, even after this session, that I'm more than happy to have more of an in-depth conversation, but also to provide unwritten information to you. I guess to start off, at the end of 2009, the Australian government announced massive service delivery reform in Australia. And one of the key things was actually to bring together every single service delivery organisation into one organisation, now known as the Department of Human Services. Now that might sound like, oh yeah, no worries, but we've got 5 different organisations in a government that are coming together in a relatively short period of time. End of 2009, and this all happened within a legislative framework by 2011. So 1st of July 2011, we've got one massive organisation, 36,000 people, over 600 service centres across Australia. We've got a massive call centre processing that have turned into smart centres, and we have one of the most, I guess, engaged 24/7 emergency response capabilities within Australia as well. So this all came together, and I've got to say, although all organisations within the government all had very different cultures. So when you talk about cultural change, and when then you look at it from a design point of view, there was a massive shift that needed to happen. So on the top, just some really high-level stuff around some of the things that happened from a strategic point of view, but underneath is, I guess, some of the things that were underpinning that from a service design perspective. One of the things we were very fortunate about is within the announcement of the changes, in 2010 a co-design project started, and we were provided with funding with one of the only projects within this massive reform to not actually be asked to give that specific savings, so from a financial point of view. So this was a huge turning point, and there's been numbers of years of work that we've done to try to influence the government to look at investing in co-design. So that was huge, and so that sort of started us off on what do we actually do to get to where we need to be. So some of the things like, customer journeys, and we did a whole heap of different prototyping and looking at what we could do. We partnered with the Australian Centre of Social Innovation. In Australia, we partnered with the Victorian government. So we started to actually really push the boundaries to how do we get this insight about our customers. Now, we within our organisation, there's a massive research department, but it was looking at how do we really understand in depth, if we're going to shift the way that we deliver services to people, how do we do that properly? And service design became very much a clear way of doing that. We organised a methodology, and we're at a point now that we're actually envisaging into 2020 what would a service offer look like for different groups of people. So we've shifted from a very program-led model of service delivery to really looking at it from a user-centred point of view. And this is a huge shift. And I've got to say, and I talked about it in This Is Our Journey, and I've got to say we're very much still on a journey. And if you think about it from a cultural change point of view, one of our key things around this that we're working on is we may have the language and the terminology, and I'll give you a bit of insight into our methodology as we go along, but are we actually bringing rhetoric into reality? And this is a key thing that I've been very passionate about, is to say it's not just about using the language and the terms and doing some of the methodology, it's actually about do we live our design and what we're talking about in every day. So this is where innovation has become really important, but what I'm talking to you more about today is around our capability framework. So I think even our lovely last speakers talked about the importance of engaging people, and I think what has become really important as we've built a whole new division within the department around future service design is to actually say if we do not empower people and provide them with the skills and capabilities that they need to be able to deliver this in a long-term way, in a very multi-layered way, we are never going to get the outcomes that we want. And I guess on the journey that you saw initially, or I guess the timeline I should say, is that there's been so many lessons learned in the last 2 years about what we have had numerous consultants come in and out, and I know a number of you are from consultancies, and we've created excellent partnerships. But one of the learnings has been is if we're going to have a sustainable model, and we're actually going to deliver on this, our mission is basically the service you need when you need it. We really need to make sure that this is infiltrated throughout the whole organisation. So we're doing all the things that we talk about in service design around prototyping and from the outside in. And we've got very much this thing around balance, around what's desirable, what's viable, what's possible, from a business point of view, from a people point of view, from a technology perspective. The other thing with this that has been done in parallel and launched this year is our service delivery operating model has completely changed. And part of the key, again, I tried to look at sharing some of this visually with you, but it's a little bit too complex. But the key thing around it is we've shifted the model to more of a service continuum. So basically helping people look at, can we move services into a more self-managed or a naturally connected way? So can we look at delivering services in a way that people don't have to have a huge amount of interaction with us? And what do we do to empower people to do that? And on the other hand, what do we do to invest in at the other end when people aren't very competent or able to look after their own affairs? How do we actually support them? And the thing with the Department of Human Services, with the outreach around social and health related services that we deliver, is every single Australian will be in touch with this department at some point in their life. So one of the things that, and one of the questions that I constantly ask people when we're doing this, and I'll encourage you to ask this in yourself throughout, and when we're going into, I'll give you an idea of our methodology that we're using, is a very simple question. So what? Alright, so we're really encouraging this, we're developing all of this throughout, we've got methodologies happening, we're focusing on exploring and innovating and evaluating, we're looking at all of this, we've got projects that are left, right and centre, but so what? Are we actually changing the end user experience? And this is something for us that we're constantly having to challenge ourselves on, because within a government bureaucracy, and even though we've got this shift that's happening to this citizen-centric view, at the end of the day you've still got a multi-layered hierarchical model that you're still dealing with. So when we do this, And what I've found with people within the organisation too, and we're developing a group of designers, that sometimes we can get caught in certain phases. Particularly certain designers love to stay in the explore phase, you know? Don't know about any of you, but you know, it seems to happen that we just love to explore the possibilities. And to move people on to innovate, yeah, we get them there, but okay, what are we going to do to execute and then evaluate? So this is a constant in us, and we understand it's an iterative process, but it's also challenging people constantly to not get caught in one element and to actually move things through, and to remind ourselves that at the end of the day, we are about changing that experience for our Australian people. So some basic principles, nothing new to any of you, around collaboration, shaping, balancing, innovating. And I guess the balance is one of the key things for us, which is absolutely crucial. I have people come to me at different times that talk about, Cybelle, we could do this, we could do that, and you know, we need to challenge the executive constantly on all these things. On one hand, yes, but on the other hand, we're not just delivering a citizen-centric service in a bubble. We do have government priorities that we have to balance it out. So there is a constant way of trying to look at how do you make sure that we are being true to a design process, and what I challenge our staff about is not to be too purist, yet at the same time don't dilute what you're doing that takes away from actually what you're trying to achieve. And this then brings us, I guess, to the capability, and I'm sorry the colours haven't come up very well there, but the capability of what we're trying to do is around actually building this capability internally within the organisation and across and down below as well. And I think we're looking at it from both top down and bottom up. And I guess all of these key areas, and we've deliberately chosen a jigsaw puzzle for the sense of that there has to be interconnection around anything to do with our practice and our methodologies. If you're not connected with how the organisation actually operates, the leadership, the governance, and what I would say here when you're talking values and culture is what are the current conditions that you're working within. And this is crucial because one of the things we have found as we've tried to push the boundaries within a government context is at times people aren't ready to hear what you need to say. So you have to get them involved and they have to be part of the practice. So the other key thing when we're trying to do any type of exercises around this is making sure you've got the right people in the room at the right time. And then you're constantly looking at pushing those boundaries. So what does that mean? And why are we talking capability? And this is a very simple, and I've kept, I think unfortunately our arrows have gone in and out, sorry about that. But this is a cycle, and it's a wheel, and it's again deliberately that way. Because one of the things is we tested, and we worked with consultants, and we looked at what was happening within the organisation, that currently we've got what I would call a huge amount of busyness happening around design. People going in, they're doing lots of different things. There's some great new things. You know, we're exploring and prototyping new types of office environments in shopping centres, and there's some great work happening. We're really looking at the whole service offering around families and job seekers, the way that we can make it much more useful for them. But at the end of the day, we've got people of very varying ranges of capability, and how do you keep them engaged? How do you make sure that they're part of the journey, both from a design point of view, but also organisationally, and you bring this together? And what we're developing and finding with people is that coaching is a really key tool. So we need to work with people in a real-time way. What was happening previously is we'd say, okay, well here's a gap, here's a skill gap, here are all the capabilities we need, we'll send people off, they get training, or they'll work with consultants and they come back. It doesn't work. For some people, yeah, that's how they operate. But it needs to be in a much more real-time perspective. They need to know that when they go and they facilitate a workshop, or they do some journey work, or use research, or whatever it is, that they've got the support there to say, how did I go? Or I really know I did a really bad job. What am I going to do differently next time? Because the reality is within a government organisation, and similar for other organisations, but here of the failing fast early is a really important component. So this isn't only important from a perspective of the staff, but it's also important for our executive as well. How do we coach and develop them from a design point of view to realise that we're not going to get it right first time, and actually that's part of the process. And we've got to get away from that we have to deliver a perfect product first time, every time. And when it comes to services and when you're trying to transform a whole way of delivering services, that's huge. So this is I've taken it into a very simple way, and there's actually very deliberately, I've left this in a very simple PowerPoint diagram that became more simple with the arrows gone. But I think one of the other key messages with this was one of the learnings that we've had is that not everyone within the government, and we don't have the funding nor the resources to get everyone up to date from a graphic design or a visualisation or an information design point of view. So what we're trying to break down is to say, okay, we need a certain level of skill in different areas within the organisation. We need some specialists, and definitely within our division, we've got a range of specialist skills, but how do we empower the rest of the organisation to have an understanding of design and that they feel that they can use it? Because if you use too complex graphics or information with people within the organisation, what we find is that they go, that's great, but they step away because they go, this is too much for us. We don't know what to do next. And when you've got different layers within the organisation, this is how we're trying to do it. To say, look, this is quite simple. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be too complex, and you can actually participate within this, and we will help and support you along the way. So we're really creating an internal coaching capacity as well throughout this process. The other thing, when you're talking about a service delivery organisation from a government point of view, over the last few years, the other, and it's a very simple realisation really, is the fact that we may gain a huge amount of insight as a service delivery organisation, and we do, every day, not just from a design point of view, but just from the basic interactions. And I think what became very, very obvious is if we don't have policy partners engaged, we're not going to fully transform the experience for the Australian citizen at the end. So what we are trying to look at here is at the end of the day, we need to influence policy formulation as well. So when you're talking about design and understanding design, and from a service design perspective within the organisation, we're also saying we need to practice so well and do it in a way that is so transformational for people that we get our policy partners engaged and involved at the same time. So part of my responsibility is also to look at how do we strategically engage the policy areas. And for some different countries, I know this isn't as much of an issue because they might have policy and service delivery in the same agency. But for us, in the way that they've said it, service delivery is in one massive organisation, so we gain lots of insight through that, but all of our policy departments are separate. So this is another huge thing from when you're talking about cultural change, we're not just looking at it from a cultural change point of view within the organisation, but how we can actually influence outside to other policy departments. So the other thing we've realised through this as well, and part of the reason from a capability point of view that we've gone through a coaching model process, is to also say the best way for us to get our policy partners involved is to make sure we lead this in such a way that they just want to be part of the fun. Alright? So the other thing within the organisation that this has been important to develop too, in very simplistic terms, is to say we need to also make sure roles and responsibilities are clear. So although we've got a whole division that's specific around future service design, at the end of the day, if you go back to our methodology, we have to hand some of this stuff over to other groups. So we need to then still support some and facilitate the business change, and we need to guide the departmental improvement. So we've also had to start to define, because again, with limited time and resources, how do you actually define those roles and responsibilities, and how do you support people to come on the journey, but also to make sure that they don't lose the design intent that has been created over a period of time. Finally, I guess, one of the things we are also very, focused on is around valuation to demonstrate value. But also, as part of this, there's a very clear maturity model. And I think we all know the cliches that you can't run before you walk. And I think this is really important, that we've had to manage expectations. If I come back to it, the beginning, that I spoke about the design and this language gets used but not always put into practice. This is actually really important for us. So we've broken it down into accountability and process, ability, awareness and adoption. And again, look at this in a very circular way. And this is something that we've got some different milestones along the way over the next couple of years, and we'll look at evolving and iterating as we go as well. This is part of a journey that we did for First Time Mum. And I wanted to come back to this image, I guess, as we ended. And when we did this work, I'm actually a first-time mum. I've got a 13-month-old that's in Holland visiting Dutch family at the moment. And this was really, it resonated really strongly for me that when we went through this process of the journey, that there's so many pain points for the first-time mum. And in Australia, when you get parenting payment, it should actually be a really simple service, and it's not. And this was one that we really started to go, well, can we actually naturally connect here? Can we look at ways that behind the scenes, when for a citizen, a new mum, this is definitely not the time that they need any extra emotional stress in their life. So this is one of the ones we're really trying to look at, how do we naturally connect behind the scenes for people. But I guess I also wanted to come back to the sense of a journey to say, from an organisational point of view too, we're very much on a journey and we're feeling our own pain points at the moment. And I think that what we need to be careful of within designers is, as we try to move any organisation from all the rhetoric to the reality, is that empowering people to be able to do that both in and outside the organisation is key. And creating and helping to create the conditions and the support and nurturing that and helping people navigate that over a period of time is really important. So thank you.